Hi, Jamie Austin with Real Estate of Mind. Thank you for coming back to us. We love having you here. So Real Estate of Mind, today we are going to talk about real estate and getting real. And today we have a special guest, Leigh McMahon, who is a lender in Keller Williams Newport Beach office, but she's also with her own company, and we'll let her talk about that. But today's podcast I'm really excited about because it's about FIRE. And I don't know if you've heard that an acronym yet, but it's Financial Independence, Retire Early. Let me say that again. FIRE. Financial Independence, Retire Early. It's a really hot topic these days, and I think you're going to start to hear more and more about it. So welcome, Leigh. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what your company and what you work for and what your title is and all that good stuff.
Well, thank you for having me. And I
Absolutely.
love FIRE. Like, it's so hot, right?
Yes,
like, the real estate
absolutely.
market's going to
It
continue
is.
to be hot. We'll go into that. But I've been in the industry. I started out in 2002, and I've really had my own company working as a mortgage broker the last 9 years, and it's solutions-based. And I always say, think yes.
Yeah,
And
I
aside
like it.
from that, I'm a mother of two, and I just took on a part-time job as the senior football mom for my son's
Awesome.
high school team. So,
wonderful.
yeah,
I
good
love
times.
it. I love it. I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
So, rates have really jumped. Obviously, this is one of the things that I'm running in with my clients. So, rates have really jumped in the past few months, and people are nervous. So, how would you respond to that? To people like you said, yes, I love that's your foray in. So how would you tell them? Because of course I know I've even had some people step out of the market for a little bit, going, I'm going to time the market. The rates are too high. What do you tell them?
Well, at the end of the day, it's just really what's their thought process. Why do they want to buy in the first place? Are they buying to flip a property, or are they buying to raise their family and lay down roots?
Yeah.
And as long as they're comfortable with the payment, that's all that matters. So a lot of people are trained to shop interest rates,
That
but
is
it's
true.
really the payment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like back it up and focus less on the interest rate and more about the payments, what you're comfortable with, and what your strategy is.
And
Is it
why do you want to own a house in the first place?
Right.
Why is it important to you?
because I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And if it's a first time purchase, that's different than somebody who's like, I now have a family, I've been married, and now we have little ones on the way. And
Right.
so now we need to expand. Or I'm purchasing this property so that I could be closer to my grandkids, or, whatever the situation might be.
Exactly.
Very cool. So if someone comes out to you and wants to discuss the FIRE, which is Financial Independence, Retire Early, I've been trying to really help some of my clients think outside the box, because I think what I'm starting to feel like from a lot of people is I don't want to be doing this rat race forever. So what do I need to do to be really proactive about financial independence and retiring early?
Right. And once again, it's just dig deep. Like, what are your goals? Where do you want to live? How long do you want to live there? What are your plans? Is it to be by grandkids, or is it to go live in another country and have an experience and learn to speak Spanish in Spain?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, what is your goal? And then it's kind of like, how do you create the solution to take that vehicle with you? And there's so many different options. So what's really fun with my job is coming up with a real estate portfolio for people to be able to live out their dreams.
I love that.
Yeah.
And speaking of, when you said to take that vehicle with you, and literally that could be a tiny home on wheels that you literally take with you.
Yes.
So with financial independence and retire early, there are people that have 401ks. I always say, like, real estate should be part of the portfolio. You should diversify. But I think also with the volatility of the market that's happening right now, what I'm finding is you're going to see that real estate's coming back into being one of the steady eddies, one of the true blues, one of the things that you can count on. Now, the clip at which it appreciates may not be as high. I mean, it has been historically really high in the last few years. But I think when the market levels out a little bit, it's still going to be consistent enough to be worth the investment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If I could go and talk to my younger self, it would have been, don't sell your real estate.
Oh, that's so funny. That's what another guest on the show just said. Don't sell your real estate.
Don't sell your real estate.
Yeah, hang on to it.
Yeah, looking back, hindsight, right?
Of course.
2020. So, I mean, if you own real estate, it's definitely a vehicle to hold. It's something that, you can't build land. Like, there's
That's
only
right.
so much land.
That's right.
You can't go wrong with it. And it's really just the long-term hold.
Yeah, and we were talking about the long-term hold, and are you getting into the market to flip? Because that's obviously a little bit different. But one thing that people might not know, and that is what I love to talk about, and I'm doing seminars around Los Angeles and Orange County about the FIRE seminars. People don't really understand, what is your FIRE number. Have you heard of this? What's your FIRE number?
what is the number you need to retire with?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how you arrive at your FIRE quote number is you take all of your expenses, and there's enough where you can, and I'm talking like it's education, it's credit cards, it's mortgage payments, monthly obligations, and then some subscription services. You name it, you run the gamut. You get all of that down and get really current and clear with yourself about what that number is. Then you divide that by 0.03, and that's you get your FIRE number. So that usually it might be around 2.6. So you might need $2.6 million to retire and live off of those current expenses.
Right.
So
I love that. And I think it's also your lifestyle. Like how much
Absolutely.
do you want to go shopping and going out to eat and really getting clarity of the life that you want to live.
Because it's not just the basics. You have to include those things, and that should most definitely be included in your FIRE number.
Yeah.
And again, you're like, well, you know what? Could I live comfortably the way I'd like to live right at this moment? Or would I still want to make a little more and have a little more cushion to like allow for more trips or more, luxury items per se? And then if so, then your FIRE number would change. But what I love then is once you have that number, you get with a financial planner and or a lender that can help you with that forecast and build backwards, so that it's really inspiring people to save, to cut back, and to maybe like put the instant gratification on the lower list, and like really going, if I have a bigger picture on how I can actually live on just interest alone and my savings and all the things I've got in place, wouldn't that be desirable? So you know what? So maybe I don't have to take that trip this year.
Right.
Maybe I really don't need that Chanel bag or whatever it may be, So it's kind of interesting because I think people are getting really stoked about it.
And I think it's not even just like looking at Gen X, which are turning the age of like 55, 56 this year, or even the baby boomers. You have the millennials and even Gen Z that are thinking, hey, I can work remotely. What would it take for me to go and live somewhere else part of the year and still be somewhat retired, but have a little side hustle where I have some income coming in on the remote side?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that because I know that millennials are going to be, and I've said this in another podcast, but millennials are going to be the largest pool of buyers very quickly. And they're going to be there for the next 25 years, I think they said.
I think they already are the largest pool of buyers.
And they were like, they are not interested in buying mansions. They're interested in, like you said, lifestyle, flexibility with their schedule, working from home. They're willing to go smaller so that they can have more flexibility to do other things with their money.
They're so smart. I love working with them. The ideas I get so many ideas just talking to them on a day-to-day basis.
I love that.
I'm finding out their real estate portfolio and their goals. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think of that. That's a great idea.
Like what's an example? Can you think of
an example? Like one of the examples is I had one particular gentleman and he bought like 6 homes in the course of a year. And I was very nervous because we had gone through the recession in 2008. And it's just, I had to like physically remind myself that will never happen again. Right? There's, first of all of the mortgages made since then are good mortgages. People actually had to qualify. Number 2, this isn't a housing crisis.
That's right. That's what I said.
There's more
Absolutely.
equity in people's homes than there's
ever
before.
Been.
Before there was you have rising rent. Right? So there's just so many reasons, and you just don't have the new construction. There just was not the building to supply for the millennials
Thank
and
you,
the
pandemic.
Gen Z. Yeah, exactly. So it's just the inventory so low, even with the market shifting and changing with inflationary, causes, you still have such a low demand. It's not going to be a buyer's market anytime soon. Yeah.
I'm seeing a tinge of a buyer's market, but it's not like to the degree where it's like buyers can like write their own ticket and say, this is how it's got to be or we're walking. There still is going to be that because there's still low inventory. So until that catches up where I think they were short 5 to 10 million products to sell to people. So we're 5 to 10 million houses
if there was
gone.
No homes that came on the market, the supply would be gone in 5 months.
That's right. And that's what you need to know. So it's like you got to kind of think a little down the line. And what we were even talking about is also in doing that too, even investing in like cryptocurrency, because I think also the real estate market's probably going to turn to actually, I've already had somebody ask me, can I purchase a home with cryptocurrency?
And the answer is yes.
The answer is
The
yes.
answer is absolutely you
There's
can.
not a lot of places in California that are doing it. Miami is kind of starting the bandwagon with that, but there
Right.
are a couple of exchanges that will allow you to exchange Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it
We
is.
can do it, absolutely. The key is they just want to see how the money went into crypto and then coming into a U.S. institution.
So as long as you can follow it,
yes,
just follow
exactly.
the money.
Just paper trail it.
Yep, and
Yeah.
paper trail like everything. So it's going to open up a whole new
Yeah.
world and realm of real estate. And for the people that are looking to retire early, and what, like you said, you've got millennials that are now, they're in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're already thinking about retirement.
Oh yeah, their real estate portfolio, their goals is one of the first questions we go over when we're applying for a mortgage is what's your thought process and goals in the next 5 years. And a lot of them, what they're doing is they're getting their starter home, and instead of selling it, which typically I did personally with my houses. Okay, sell it, take the money, get a bigger house, take it and get a bigger house.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're turning it into rentals.
Yes.
And then they're going and purchasing another property. And now they have a vehicle where they're getting money given every month.
Yep.
And they're able to continue to build their real estate portfolio without being extreme and having anxiety that they over leveraged.
That is
Yeah.
amazing. And it's a different mindset, I feel like. Like there's definitely a different mindset out there with real estate and what can be done.
Absolutely.
And again, that instant gratification, I think being delayed a little bit has allowed them to see maybe the bigger picture of I don't need to sell it just to go up and stair step up to a bigger house.
Right.
I could go to another house. Again, maybe that's not the be all end all house, but I'm keeping the first house and now getting income out of it.
Exactly.
Which is going to support even the second house.
Correct.
Yeah, with that. So if somebody were to come to your office and say, I've never invested in anything, I would love to be retired in like 10 years, what might be some advice you would give them?
Well, I just dig into their thought process and their goals, right? Find out what they're really looking to, why they're wanting to retire early, where they see themselves retiring. Is it going to be here in California versus Texas? That's going to be a different game changer, right? Just on the tax strategies of what they're looking at. And then also, do they have a financial planner? Because those are the conversations that I love to have and get in with a financial planner to see how we can get them where they need to be as quickly as they can. But a lot of times, if you have somebody who's in the retirement age right now and say that they have like a 15-year mortgage and they want to retire and they could refinance into a 30-year and be able to turn it into a rental, it doesn't matter if it's going to be paid off in 15 years or 30 years if it's profiting for them.
Right.
And they can now go live somewhere else and have that income. That's a retirement vehicle.
Yep.
You could go the opposite direction and have a 30-year loan and drop it down to 15 years. Look at the amortization. You're going to save thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just on interest. So it can go both ways. And you just really have to think outside of the box.
Yeah, and what we were talking about is some of the lenders, even though like right at this particular moment in time, lenders are being they're pulling in the reins a little bit because again, it's not the same market as 2008 when people couldn't really qualify for the loan to begin with. That's not what we're talking about. But they are kind of pulling in restrictions a little bit, and this might just be because the Fed is, supposed to raise the rate another 0.75% as of this week at some point. So that's why everybody's kind of grumbling about it. But again, markets will level out. You just gotta have an attitude of you're in it for the long haul.
Right.
And this is not something that you want to get in and get out necessarily. I mean, it can be, but I think what people are finding is that there's creative ways now to even get investment property. It used to be where you'd get an investment property, you'd really love a long-term tenant that would be in there forever. And now people are finding I can make a ton of money on short-term rentals and Airbnb and VRBO, not only make the mortgage and the expenses and the taxes and the insurance, but beyond that.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Just recently, for example, if I had somebody who was looking to buy a house and use it as an Airbnb, which monthly is going to show a larger profit versus a long-term rental, we would have to qualify off of a long-term rental. Now investors are saying, listen, if the seller has been using this home as an Airbnb and you can document 2 years history of Airbnb rentals, we will allow it. So you're seeing some guidelines change where people are able to get in and take advantage of that soon.
Because that was my next question. I was like, are you seeing banks behave in a way that you haven't seen before? And then what is your take on helping people who still want to achieve early retirement?
Right, absolutely.
That's amazing.
mean, you have other like investment like the DSCR. This has become like one of the biggest investment vehicles I've seen really pop up this last year.
And DSA, what
Debt
is it?
service cover ratio loan.
Thank you.
And so it's basically like buying a residential property but treating it like a commercial property. As long as the rental will cover the mortgage, the institutions will lend money on it. There's no income qualifications. We're not looking at tax returns,
That's
pay stubs.
amazing.
It's just will the property produce?
Yeah.
And if so, then you can be able to get that investment. And it's all over the country.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, that's a big one that's come out on the market.
Yeah.
And then ADUs, like being able to, you're seeing like people, the investors being able to do more or qualify more with that. And then just on the standard, like a lot of homeowners, they look at buying, maybe a 4-unit. Living in one unit and then renting out the other units. Or buying a house and renting out the rooms. There's a lot of ways for people to create rental income.
Absolutely. We were talking about that too. Like they're starting to get really creative with even single family homes on how you can quarantine like areas off and revamp them to where you can rent them out. I mean,
Exactly. You buy a house that's over by a college and you rent it out to the students.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. There's a lot of, and to me, like if you get somebody that maybe isn't quite as clear, like about their goals or like they don't know what's possible. So like you said, we're talking everywhere from short-term rental places to buying, a 1 to 4 unit, which is considered, by the way, still residential. Anything 5 units or above is considered commercial, just so you know the difference, which means different qualifications, different down payment. So we're trying to, obviously the idea would be in mind to try to get something as creative as possible, the least amount of money down, and the best interest rate possible.
Right, and that's usually being a primary residence. Living in it, you can come in with a minimum down payment, you get a lower interest rate. Whereas if you get a secondary home, the interest rate is going to be a little bit higher
and more down
versus
payment.
an investment. Because if you're going to default on a loan, you'll default on your investment property
before you would your primary residence.
Exactly. Then your second, then your primary, and that's why you get a lower interest rate on the primary.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I think to myself, like with millennials and stuff now, thinking like if they're stair-stepping their homes and they're really reducing their carbon footprint, and they're actually, some of them are actually okay to rent as long as it makes sense for them to have the flexibility to be able to work or to buy or to do a tiny home. Or we're seeing a lot of new products enter the market that weren't there.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
do
love
too.
change.
I do too. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And then again, everybody's fire number is different, right? I mean, it just really depends on what you're looking for.
Like what lifestyle you want.
What lifestyle you want, because you can have a ritzy, glamorous lifestyle, might take you a couple more years, or you might have already been really good at putting away money in your 401k and been investing already.
Right.
So that could already be sort of in place for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, like last year, for example, in September of 2021, the guidelines changed for reverse mortgages, a HICMA, which is through FHF, it's a government loan. And before you had to be 62 years old in order to qualify for this program. Now it's 55. So they're allowing people to retire early, and it all comes off of their age. So they could take the home that they have right now and they could refinance it and not have a mortgage payment. And now they can be able to have this lifestyle, or they could sell their home and purchase another home and have no mortgage payment and then take the money and go somewhere else. So it's definitely a retirement vehicle. Real estate absolutely is a retirement vehicle for a lot of people.
That's amazing. And there's now just so many more ways to get there. Yeah, it used to be just kind of more of a linear path, like try to acquire as many properties as you can, fill them with good rental, like good tenants and whatever, and then that was kind of how you did. Then you might move in to graduate into 1031 exchanges so that you're deferring the tax basis for the next one and the next one,
which is
another
a true and proven model.
Absolutely. And we will probably, that will probably be a separate podcast actually, to have a 1031 exchange
really
coordinator
detailed.
here.
So many things you can do with the 1031.
Very true, but it does allow you to take a property and then identify other properties, and normally what you would have to do is pay the taxes, capital gains taxes on that property to move to another one. They defer that and then they move it into the next one. And then if you do it again, you can keep it. Really, the model is you can indefinitely defer paying taxes until you actually have to sell.
Right.
So it is a model that will help you get income generating, and then that's a retirement vehicle.
Right,
Another
exactly.
one.
There's so many things you can do. People who have a lot of debt, they can cash out and pay off their debt.
Yep.
And then take that money that they were using to pay their bills and put it into another retirement vehicle. You could look at doing different amortizations and algorithms. If I paid $500 more a month towards my mortgage, would that pay off my loan 4 years earlier?
Yeah.
Right? And so you reach out to your loan professional and say, hey, help me. This is my strategy. What do I have to do?
And which
to be
loan
able
do I
to
need to
it?
pay off?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I have a software system that I just set my clients up with, and they can go and they can play around and they say, oh, Leigh, like if I do this, I can do that. Or you could take a principal reduction. You know, you have somebody who maybe is selling their business when they're going to retire, and then they get the money, and then they call their bank and say, hey, I got this extra $200,000. I want to do a principal reduction on my current loan and recast to my new loan amount and speed up the process. That way you don't have to refinance to do that.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
great. Oh, there's just so many. I love this.
Yeah.
Because it's just so interesting. And a lot of people, I think, don't know that. Like, and I think there's also a lot of bad information out there, which scares people off from actually speaking to somebody like yourself, right? It's
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not really ready yet. Well, when are you going to be ready? And the point is like, you just jump in. You got to start someplace. And even if just the starting off place is meeting with a lender and finding out
Yeah.
what your purchasing power is, there's power in that as well.
There is. I think it's just take the friction out. You know, people are so afraid. You don't have to have your credit run in order to get an idea to start building your recipe. And it's
That's a
talking
great-
to multiple people
Can you say that one more time? You don't have to have your credit run.
to build your recipe.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because it's true. People are like, well, I don't want my credit run because I'll
Yeah.
take a ding, I'll take a hit on my credit.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like use lenders also how they're meant to be, which is your financial strategist, part of
Yes.
your team in reaching your FIRE goals.
Yeah.
And if you haven't even heard of FIRE, there's like so many articles now out there, and like how people they're almost making FIRE a game.
I love it.
It's like, what can I take out that, like, maybe it's the $5 lattes every day, which adds up to, $5 adds up to like $25 a week, and then a month, and then it's like,
do you really need it?
do you really need
Do
it?
I really need the $1,000 car payment, or could I deal with a car for $500 a month car payment?
Exactly.
Like, do I really need that nice of a car?
Yeah, do I really need the $400 gym membership, or can I deal with the $100 gym membership?
Yeah,
It
and
becomes a game.
Isn't that funny? Just saying $100 membership, not even the $23. Like you could just can you handle $100? We're so pampered here in
I know,
California.
it's true,
ridiculous.
it's true. But it's true. And it becomes a game to try to figure out the
Yep.
ways in which you can just kind of really pull back and say, don't need this that much. Yes, would I love to be able to travel first class? Absolutely. Well, then if that's the goal, then you might be traveling economy for a while,
Right.
or you might just like go, maybe we'll stop 4 trips a year or 2 trips a year to
Yeah.
1, or we'll go in the car more than we've been flying. There's so many fun ways that you can actually start to kind of just make this a game to
It
make
really
it work.
is, and I do a lot of loans for like police officers and firefighters, and that is a game to them. You know, they have like they're so well qualified because they really carry no debt,
Yeah.
and they want to pay off their mortgage as fast as they can, and it is a competition with them, right? It
That's
is
hilarious.
a competition, yeah, who can pay off their house the fastest.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. And so they'd come to you, so they have almost no debt, but then like, again, people would maybe assume certain professions like teachers and
Yeah, I had a police officer. He came. He had a secondary home, and he had his primary. We did a cash out on his primary. He paid off his secondary home, and then he just made his payment smaller.
wow.
Versus paying the 2 payments, he lowered his payment and he paid off the second home.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And then did he rent out the second home, or was that a vacation
He
home for
turns
him?
it into an Airbnb. It is his secondary home. I think that's the big thing with the generation that are buying investment properties is they want to buy in areas that they want to live in, right?
Right.
They want to visit. That's why they want to do Airbnb, because they want to enjoy the home as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I mean, it's kind of getting funny because like now we have friends that are starting to go, well, how about I'll get get the mountain place and you get the beach place and you get the this, and then we can all share it, and then like just all like Airbnb it, or we'll rent it out, and then we'll have it at certain times of the year. And that's getting to be kind of fun to see.
It's super fun. And you hear like Greece, for example, like they just opened up where you can buy real estate there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the euro's 1-to-1 now.
I know.
Can you believe that? Like, let's
first
go on a
time in
vacation,
like
please.
20 years. Yeah,
Yes,
it's
I've
like,
never
wow,
had it.
I love it.
Yeah, so
that's
super
amazing.
exciting stuff.
And I've heard people are fleeing to Portugal is another place that are in Spain. There's
Italy,
affordable places all over
all
the
these
place.
places and beautiful places, and then they
Yeah.
turn their houses into rentals here, and then they get to go live. You know, you get on TikTok, which I love to do. I'm on TikTok. I do posts on TikTok for mortgages, and you have people that will say, what is it like to live in Bali for a month? And then they break down their costs. And you're like, you can live in Bali for $600 a month? If I turn my house into a rental and I'm making $2,000 after my costs, I could go live in Bali for a year.
Yeah.
And I think it's really opening the eyes to this fire. For everybody's
Yeah.
like, I could do that. I could do that. It's realistic.
It's kind of about just where to point and know where to get the good information.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that stems from like having a really good real estate professional team around you.
Absolutely.
My
It's
team
all about the
is
team.
you. My team is like, it's the lender, it's myself, it's the escrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes I'm looping in a tax attorney so that we make sure
Yes.
that my clients are getting the best advice. Because as we all know, real estate agents and brokers, we don't give tax advice. We just
Nope,
point
can't
you
do
in
it.
the right direction to get it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it might be like, check to see with your tax attorney,
Right.
is this the right time to move now, or are we doing a plan?
Right.
Like maybe it's not this year, maybe it's the next year. So sometimes those things don't have to be acted upon like immediately.
Right.
They can just be they're up and coming and they're brewing.
Yes.
And then people get really excited, and then they get their family members involved in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's my husband, who is an engineer and a little bit of a nerd, but we're looking at our spreadsheet every weekend, like where are we going? And okay, well, if we take this and we make this number up, and what if we do
Oh,
this?
I
and this?
love that. You need to know your numbers. A lot of people, like you said, they don't want to talk to somebody because I think at the end of the day, they're afraid to know their numbers. They really don't want to see how much they're wasting of their money.
I think you're absolutely right. And so we have discretionary spending, but then we have the absolutes. And so then I was like, well, for this, if we want to do this, then let's just cut back on this a little bit. And then we just plug it in and we see the numbers and they just change.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's amazing.
You're inspiring me to get an Excel sheet now with my husband.
And it is definitely an Excel spreadsheet for sure.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So let me see. Are there any specific loan products out there that can address concrete steps for people beginning to see a larger wealth portfolio through investing?
Yeah, so once again, I think it really comes down to what they're looking to do with their investments. So you have the DSCR loans where they could be able to say, I'm not finding anything maybe in California that's going to give me the return I want. But maybe if I went to Florida or if I went to another state, would I be able to get that return?
Yeah.
And so you're seeing a lot of people start looking maybe into other states.
Absolutely.
More so like in the last 2 years than probably previous.
Yeah.
You definitely have people that are paying down their interest rates, paying down their points when they're buying their homes. If they're going in for the long-term hold, they can negotiate with the seller and say, hey, if you give me a $6,500 credit, what would that do to buy down my interest rate? And maybe that saves them $134 a month.
Yeah.
But once again, thousands and thousands long-term hold on the property, and it allows them to have that long-term, like, okay, this will be my retirement. I will turn this into a rental later on. And by prepaying that interest rate, when they talk to their CPA, they should be able to say, hey, we prepaid this interest ahead of time. Is there any tax benefits? And they'll go over that with them too.
Absolutely. So again, having a really good, solid team around you
Yeah.
is really crucial. And with retiring early, or even at that, like speaking to somebody, like if you're with a corporation or whatever, where you have a 401k, it probably is a good time to speak with a financial advisor. Like because some of those assets won't be able to be touched for a while, or you're going to pay taxes on them. So it's just kind of like getting a game plan.
Yes.
And even if your game plan is, I don't have a game plan.
Right.
Even if your game plan is just starting with an idea.
Right.
I don't want to be working forever. And I think everybody would agree with that statement right there. I don't want to be working forever.
If you don't have a financial advisor, that's when somebody should be reaching out to you and saying, Jamie, who do you trust?
Right.
Because it all comes down to trust. This is the biggest decision that people are setting up for their whole life. They just want transparency, and they want somebody who's going to guide them down the right path. And I think people are so fearful that they're going to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And so it's like analysis paralysis. They just stop.
Yeah.
Versus looking at their numbers and really dreaming of the future.
Right. And it's kind of like going back to one of those things. I think you really do have to spend some time getting really current with your numbers, knowing
Yes.
where you are, just the good, the bad, the ugly. And maybe that's a Saturday morning coffee date with yourself, just to sit down and really look at those. I know for me, like I'm fresher in the morning, so I like to look at numbers and things like that more early in the morning. And then taking the time to also visualize, like you said, where do I want to be? What do I want to do? Like if you know that you're young and you're actually still climbing the ladder and there's more room for advancement, promotion, and bigger salary adjusts and all that kind of stuff, this may be like a 5 to 10 year goal.
Right.
But you can also start with the end in mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when you talk to a financial planner, they usually can go over like deferred compensation, that you could go to your employer and say, "Can we do deferred compensation? If I hit this number, where's my tax bracket, Mr. Financial Planner? How much before I get pushed into that? Okay, you can't make more than, 500,000. Okay, if I'm going to get a bonus, can I defer that compensation to the next year so I don't have to hit that tax bracket?"
That's
so
amazing.
it's just always thinking outside of the box and having a team in place where you can pick their brains and their knowledge and say, "Okay, what do you suggest? What do you suggest?" And at the end, it should just be very clear, like, "Okay, I heard to these people and this is my gut. This is where I'm going to go."
And I think you hit it on the head. I think you said, like, I think there's a lot of analysis paralysis. People are afraid to know the numbers, and also just sometimes afraid to just ask for help. And it's like one of those things where I think once you get over that and you get things in place and a game plan in place, then that is like the focus. That's the be all end all. And then perhaps retiring early and getting a part of this fire, like getting fire under your fire.
Yes.
Getting some fire under your fire is actually easier than said. That I mean, I think it's just going to become easier and more pleasurable.
Yeah.
Because thinking about honestly retiring and working from home, like I think the one thing the pandemic blew open is the idea that people have choices. They don't always have to go back to that exact same work environment
Right.
as they have done for years and years and years.
Right.
And I think it was the Great Resignation. It's why people were like, "No, I don't want to live my life this way."
Yeah, it's like, look at the environment we're in right now. You have all of this inflation, high costs, and still there's so many jobs that are still available on the market.
And it is also perhaps thinking outside the box. I mean, we're very lucky. Southern California happens to be a very sort of it's not recession proof, but it is close to.
We are one of the last places that will fill, and we are one of the first places that will recover.
Yep, exactly. And that's due to the wealth of living in California. However, the pandemic either blew up and people kept saying there was a massive migration outside of California. There were people that left California for sure, but also people moved laterally. They moved to another city. They moved to just a different neighborhood.
Yeah, you're not friends with the Facebook people that are moving to California, just the ones that have left. You don't see all the people posting that they're coming, and there's a lot of companies
and there's a
coming.
lot of companies still coming. But also, it's diversifying your portfolio. Like you said, maybe an investment property like your primary residence in California, but maybe your investment property might do better in Idaho or, wherever the state, maybe Texas,
Florida.
Texas is almost now outpriced.
Yeah, it's crazy. Everybody keeps saying buy there, buy there. Everybody has the I wish I had the, what do you call it? Why can't I think of it?
The research or
the
crystal ball?
The crystal ball. I wish I had the crystal ball because I'd go invest there. But I really don't think you can invest any bad place. It's just getting it, owning it, and just holding it.
Yep.
It's just, if you're taking something and you're trying to make a quick return, that doesn't work well. It's risky. It's risky in the stock market. It's risky anywhere you go. But if you go for a long-term hold, you just can't go wrong. And once again, you can't build land. There's only so much land.
Right.
When it's gone, it's gone.
It's gone. That's right. That's very, very true. And I think even though right now we're facing with inflation, the highest inflation we've had since 1980,
Crazy.
and it's 9.1. And yes, there's probably another interest rate hike. We've been expecting that. But tell me, lenders have sort of been building in that anticipation of rate hikes this whole year.
Right. So we've definitely, the market will always be hopeful,
Yeah.
right? Like a couple weeks ago, we had a great little improvement in rates.
Yeah.
And that was because everyone's like, with this inflation, it's really crazy. the Fed just cannot go and hit all of these rate hikes that they have on the dot plot chart.
Yep.
And they can't be as aggressive because it will put us into a depression, right?
Right.
And then you get these strong jobs data, you get higher inflationary data, and then the market goes, you know what? The economy is actually not doing so bad. This inflation is getting out of hand. Maybe the Fed's going to even go higher than 75 basis points. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll be 100 basis points this time around.
Yeah.
So then you have the market start to worsen. And then you get some other kind of data or some supply chain issue or COVID, anything that slows down the economy
Right.
is positive for interest rates. So right now, anybody who's looking to buy, it's really, once again, focusing on the monthly payment.
Yep.
And if the payment's too high, what would it take to buy down that interest rate to get you to that payment where you feel comfortable, and then focus on that negotiation with you as the realtor?
Right. Because a lot of, and this, I think it separates the men from the boys or the women from the girls. Like, I think in this market, it's going to really, really be more important than ever to have a really good, experienced real estate agent in your pocket to negotiate on your behalf, because a lot of newbie real estate agents
They
wouldn't
don't
even know
know.
to ask about buying down the rate.
And they can't explain it to their clients.
That's right.
You can't even explain it to their clients. And so it's just like, just let me talk to them.
Yep.
And I'll break it down and we'll show all of it. But then once again, the agents don't know how to negotiate
That's right.
with the listing agent. And that's why it's so important to have a strong agent who knows what they're doing, who has been through the cycles.
Yeah.
They have seen, they know how to negotiate.
Yep.
They're not fearful of somebody saying no.
Nope.
You can get a no 4 times before you get to a yes. And
That's
you
right.
need the agent who's going to get the no 4 times before
That's
they get
right.
the yes, and
And
not walk away the first no.
Exactly, and not shy away from it, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. Let me make sure we've covered everything. Do you see anything on the horizon that might not have existed before this current market, and are banks willing to help you? Or do you think we are headed in for a slew of mortgage defaults coming in the market?
So the second question, no, not a slew of defaults. A lot of people think like, oh, there's going to be all these. I think there's really going to be 2 housing markets that we're going to experience.
Okay.
You are going to have homes that are going to drop in value.
Mm-hmm.
Metropolitan areas, high crime, homelessness, those will be affected, right?
Yep.
But is it going to drop down and they're going to lose everything? No, maybe it's 20,000, maybe it's
Yeah.
100,000, but they're not going to lose like all of their equity.
Right.
And then you're going to have other areas where it's going to continue to appreciate.
Yep.
So it's really those 2 housing markets. Once again, going back, all of the mortgages made since 2008 are good mortgages.
That's right.
People qualified for it, and there's more equity than there've ever
Ever
been.
been, yeah.
So they could turn around and sell this home and be able to go somewhere else. You're not going to have foreclosures hit the market.
Yep.
But you will have maybe some Black Friday deals here and
Yeah.
there, right?
Some Black
yeah,
Friday deals.
yeah, definitely.
That you don't even have to wait to Thanksgiving for.
Yeah, maybe some places in LA you're going to be wanting to pick up pretty fast.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's areas that might have had that were headed towards gentrification that might have stopped because of the supply chain,
Right.
And the building just kind of had to do a moratorium, and now things are kind of picking back up, and they're like, oh, now we got to unload all this inventory. We still don't have a massive amount of inventory. However, I'm now seeing back on markets, which has been very rare, but buyers are now feeling a little more confident in like, I just don't have to take whatever Mr. Seller's going to throw my way.
I don't need to overbid 100, 200,000 to
Exactly.
win the deal. I don't have to maybe worry about appraisal issues. I'm getting more appraisal waivers now than I have like in the last year.
Wow.
And what that means is when I run DU, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will say, do you need an appraisal on this property, or is the value already there? And if the value is already there, there's no appraisal requirements from the bank to be
That's
able to
amazing.
lend the money. And so you have just more of a realistic market. Buyers are able to negotiate more with sellers.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, it's all supply and demand. If something's priced well, it's going to go very
That's
fast.
exactly, and I think that's the ticket. Is something has to. If sellers are realistic, they need to know they still need to price something well. And
Right.
if it's priced well, then it will go for sure.
Right. It's no more where 8 months ago where people are like, I'm just going to throw it up
And see what I get.
see if I can get it.
Yeah,
and
an
I'll just do
astronomical
what I
amount.
can do. And maybe that's why they're coming back on the market, because they're like, well, we really do need to sell, and now we need to get realistic. And now I have Jamie as my agent, and
And now we're gonna get it done.
I've been told like the way to go. But in the other regards to the questions in the current market, I am seeing a lot of investors, banks, institutions come out and offer specials. So they might say, I need to get a little bit more VA loans in our pipeline. So we're going to give an incentive. If you lock in your interest rate, we're going to have this improvement and give it to the client, so they can be able to lower their, and it'll be below market financing, or FHA, for example, or maybe high balance. And then once they fill that book of business, then they kind of raise their rates, and then you have somebody else come in and say, this is what we'll do. So being a direct lender and a portfolio lender, being able to shop and wholesale is definitely the advantage in this market.
That's amazing. Yeah. So Leigh, tell us if some of our listeners and viewers wanted to come and get in contact with you, because believe me, she knows, she walks the walk and talks the talk. And this is the first step. Even as good as an agent as I am, I can't work without people like Leigh. I just can't and won't, because they're my people that once I know that the buyers and people that are interested, sellers and buyers, once they go through Leigh and she goes, this is where we're really at, this is their real number, then I can go do my magic. But I need people like you. Right. So if people wanted to reach out to you, where would they go?
Well, I think if you're on Instagram, I'm at Mortgage Updates. I have money falling on me. I do updates on there. You guys can DM and ask questions. And then also you could just reach out to 949-239-4252. That's my cell number. And I try to always answer like Jamie, 7 days a week, always on call.
I love it. Thank you, Leigh, so much for today. I mean, I felt like there was a lot of...
It was fire.
It was fire. It was fire. It was fuego. I like it. Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate of Mind. And we'll be back with even more information. And I think probably we'll head into some 1031 exchanges.
I love it, yeah.
Yeah, because that's going to... It's a lot of value. Yeah. So thank you for visiting us with Real Estate of Mind. And if you want to check out myself, now check me out at Jamie at restateofmind.com. That's restateofmind.com. And then that hooks you up with my City of Angels Properties, OC and me, my YouTube channel. And you can see all these fantastic podcasts and get some information and be as current as you possibly can be. Thanks for sharing the day with us.